business strategies and technology strategies are becoming inseparable. Driven by the need to scale, form strategic partnerships across ecosystems, and engage customer in new ways, life sciences companies are looking for tech solutions that can help them navigate this new reality. Accenture Technology Vision 2021 defines 5 key trends and addresses critical insights into how life sciences sector in India can navigate this change. Don't wait for the new normal. Build it.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you to Accenture's Tech Vision 2021. I'm Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting at Cyber Media Research and your host for this event. The Accenture Tech Vision 2021 aims to actually discuss the key technology trends that will shape business and technology over the next few years and outlines the critical actions that leaders must take to adapt to change due to these trends. Today's event is focused on the pharma and life sciences segment, where we'll discuss the key trends that are shaping this sector's future. We have with us 4 distinguished experts who will share their views around this sector and how this sector should really gear up itself for the new normal. And I'd like to first of all welcome our guests for this today's session. Atanu Roy, Group CIO Biocon, Gyan Pandey, Global and Group CIO Aurobindo Pharma, Anjani Kumar, CIO Strides Pharma, and Ankur Aggarwal, Managing Director Technology at Accenture in India. Welcome, gentlemen. Okay, and to all the attendees, before we begin, I just want to make a note that we do have a Q&A towards the end of today's event. So please keep sharing your questions with us as you listen to the views from our esteemed speakers. So without further delay, I would first of all like to invite Ankur Aggarwal, MD Technology at Accenture in India, to kickstart this event with a presentation on tech vision for the pharmaceuticals, after which we'll do a panel discussion on reinventing pharma for the new normal. Thanks, and over to you, Ankur.
Thank you, Anil. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to have you all here with us today as I share our annual Technology Vision Trends report, which is something that we've been doing for many years. To be precise, this is actually the 21st year we are doing the Technology Vision, and it's been a remarkably accurate predictor of the important trends that leaders should follow as you chart your course into the future. And I really hope that this year as well, the trends that I share with you give you the similar experience. As a part of this research, this year we have conducted a survey across 6,000 business and IT executives globally as well as in India to capture insights into the adoption and use of emerging technologies and the impact of COVID. If you move on to the next slide, please. I think we can all agree that we've kind of run out of adjectives to adequately explain what has happened in recent times because of COVID, right? If there is one thing that is certain in this time of incredible uncertainty, it's that change is only going to accelerate. 2 facts have really emerged from COVID-19. One, that every business now is a technology business. And 2, that to be successful, companies must learn to master change. To counter the stress that COVID has created, all the leaders in our research said that they are innovating with an urgency. In fact, 83% said that they are accelerating the pace of their digital transformation. We've now really reached a moment of truth. The pace of exponential technology change is only increasing, right? Which means that leaders have to continue investing to stay ahead, and laggards really must act now to catch up, otherwise they'll be left behind. Customers and worker needs and expectations have radically shifted over the last 1 year. Things like safety, health, and security, which were not like top priority earlier, now are amongst the new requirements for loyalty. All of this is leading to a once-in-a-generation re-platforming opportunity for businesses, and the window to achieve this is very small. Leaders will really leap ahead of the laggards right now. Those who are behind in their digital transformation really need to take heed and take action, otherwise they'll really have to face unpleasant realities. I'll give you an example of a change that an organization did. Rolls-Royce, we would have heard of, right? Not really a pharmaceutical or life sciences example, but they really redesigned their entire supply chain to begin producing ventilators. Within 5 weeks, the company secured parts from 100 different suppliers and started production across 3 different sites. Some Indian companies as well, right? Bharat Forge in India, they did start manufacturing oxygen cylinder to meet the demand of the hour. Tech Vision 21, prepared by Accenture, defines 5 key trends which can help pharma manufacturers shape their future. If you move on to the next slide, please. The first trend here is to stack strategically. In our survey, what came out is that the executives stated that technology architecture is becoming critical to the overall success of their organization, and that the organization's business and technology strategies are really becoming inseparable. The exponential growth and availability of new technologies have ignited a new era of business, one where architecture really matters more than ever, and industry competition is actually becoming a competition between technology stacks that the companies possess. I'll give you an example of Moderna, right? It's a common name nowadays because of the relevance of vaccines and COVID. Moderna was one of the first ones to come up with a new vaccine. But if you dig a little under the covers, right, and look at how all of that happened, they had a new science around messenger RNA and new approaches. But they also had a drug design studio, right, which was powered by cloud and artificial intelligence. It had convolutional neural networks iterating on various models, experiments, results, data, what have you, right? All of that paired with scientists who could operate at an unprecedented speed to produce the new vaccine quickly. So as you start thinking about the new architecture of the future, it's all about how do you really move to the cloud. Pharma executives have stated in our research that to be agile and resilient, their organizations need to fast forward digital transformation with cloud at its core. So it's beyond cloud. It's all about data and AI incorporated and supporting your business. It's about the experience layer to capitalize on the new reality. And finally, it's about the security to make sure that you've managed the risk. And that is what we mean by stack strategically and the role of this going forward. If you move on to the next slide, please. The second trend is called mirrored world. So it is the power of massive intelligent digital twins. This is about the power of massive computerized trends that mirror the world, right? I mean, we've talked about digital twins for years now. So what's really different? We are seeing a big move from simulation to operation to impact now. 90% of the pharma executives believe their organizations need a centralized intelligence hub or a digital twin to gain insights into complexities as well as model their processes, people, and assets in a risk-free environment. So the next frontier of the digital twin is here now. It is accelerating at hyper speed due to the impacts of the pandemic, as well as rapid technology advancements in IoT, modeling, cloud, and edge computing. IoT sensor-based technologies and processes also aren't new, right? But their convergence to power digital twins in the built environment is a fairly recent phenomena and development. So the pandemic has really highlighted the importance of digital twins to go beyond reliability, productivity, and human experience. Just as you create a digital representation of a physical item or environment, right? It should also actually be possible to create a digital patient, a model of a human being or a human body that represents various measurements of the body, providing a personalized model of the patient over the lifetime. That's the ultimate vision of a health technology company, Philips, right? So the idea of a complete digital patient still might be far away, but digital twin technology is already being applied to one of the particular parts of the body and showing great promise. Philips has actually created a clinical application called Heart Model, which creates a personalized 3D view of the patient's heart based on 2D ultrasound images. So as Philips sees it, one day a virtual heart could really save the real one. If you move on to the next one, please. So the third trend is the technologist. It's all about democratization of technology. Now, if I said earlier that every business is a digital business, then every person needs to know technology and needs to be fluent in technology in that business. 93% of our pharma executives agreed that technology democratization is critical to digital transformation. This is critical to ignite innovation and also accelerating solution development in the organizations. At Accenture, for example, we have a program called TQ, Technology Quotient, for every one of our 500,000 employees to really better understand technology. Now, this aspect is going to be important for every company as they drive the future going forward. And it's about different ways of equipping people with new tools, low code, no code, to power up the people. Things like Honeycode from Amazon or Power Platforms from Microsoft or Appian, Mendix, Pega, you name it, right? They can help people, the average person, not really the technologist or the IT professional or a coder, to develop applications in minutes rather than old ways of doing things. So in many ways, this trend is about the rise of what people have started calling now as citizen developer, correct? Supported by the advancements of all of these low code, no code applications, cloud, AI, and other automation. COVID-19 is only increasing the need for the citizen development. I'll give an example here. A top 10 healthcare provider in the US built an Appian application for their doctors to submit their COVID-19 patients for clinical trial treatments with a new drug. The drug has limited availability, correct, at that time. So the firm is managing the patient intake and approval process by process for this trial using Appian, this application that was created. They built their application in just 24 hours and deployed it to thousands of doctors and medical centers. Now, Appian is also being used by other companies across several sectors like insurance, financial sector, government, and education to manage their COVID response and efforts, including top universities and banks. So it's quite a interesting move. If you move on to the next slide, please. The fourth trend that I would like to talk about is anywhere, everywhere. It's bring your own environment. Now, notice that I didn't say bring your own device, right? That's also a part of it, but bring your own environment is much, much broader. Looking at how we power people to work in this new way and the role of technology in doing that is important right now. This is about creating the new culture of how people work in this environment. It's about securing new ways, zero trust security as an example, right? To deal with risks in the new environment we are working with. Virtual reality used in scenarios like onboarding of employees that we are using at Accenture, or virtual reality and augmented reality for remote factory and plant inspections that a person can do for a plant on one side of the world, another side of the world rather, from their home and or their office. And that's creating a new future. The ways the work can now happen from anywhere and everywhere. And again, very different environment and context around it. If you move on to the next slide, please. The fifth and the last trend that I wanted to talk about today before we get on to a panel discussion is from me to we. And perhaps none of our other trends better illustrates the demand for trust and the role technology plays than this one. And this is all about multi-party systems through chaos. Now, what does that all mean, right? Multi-party systems through chaos. Now, future is more about complex ecosystems to solve these bigger problems that we face. I mean, things like carbon tracking, think about the broad health and healthcare systems, think about supply chains and circular supply chains. So this is going to involve a lot of multiple parties to work together. And the time for multiple party systems like blockchain, distributor ledgers, and the like is really here now. And it's required, and we are seeing the real impact of them. the pandemic really brought to life needs to trust the safety and provenance of many things, correct? From ensuring that vaccines and drugs weren't tampered with the contact tracing to digital health certificates and many more. You would have, as an example, heard of Singapore's digital health passport, right, which really helped them manage the COVID 19 crisis. Another example in this context is Nippon Express and DHL for pharmaceutical safety, for example, wherein they are building a logistics infrastructure that leverages pharmaceutical serialization to eliminate counterfeit drugs from the pharma supply chain. So things are really evolving in this space. If you move on to the next slide, please. So this just summarizes all of our 5 trends: stack strategically, mirrored world, I technologist, anywhere, everywhere, and from me to we. Now, all of these are about turning a moment of truth now really to a moment of trust. Now, with that, I'll pause and give it back to you, Anil, so that we can move on to the panel discussion.
Thanks, Ankur. I think some really good insights from you there. And in fact, I was listening carefully. Many of them actually, will actually serve as a trigger for the discussion for our panel now. So only 40% are using digital twins right now. So that's interesting, which means that, a lot of people are now planning to look at digital twin. They're seeing it seriously, but current usage is only 40%. So there's a lot of scope there. And I heard you talk about counterfeit drugs and managing that and all. So I think a lot of those things will actually, come into our discussion today. And welcome back, gentlemen, to the panel. Our discussion is actually on reinventing pharma for the new normal. And Ankur has given some really good food for thought and, to have this discussion. Now, as we all know that, the pandemic has kind of impacted every sector, and pharma is no different. In fact, this is a sector that has gone tectonic shifts. Because it's not just to ensure the sector's own health and business continuity, but because everyone else's life depends on it, literally, because you have to kind of supply the drugs. And, so many different medicines, required. They were required during first and second wave, were working on and coming out with vaccines in less than a year. I think that was a breakneck speed, something that, one couldn't have imagined happening earlier. Managing the whole supply chain disruptions or working closely with all the regulators to make sure that things come out on time. I think the sector has kind of been facing a lot of challenges in this pandemic, and it's really been disrupted. And I think it's really, I feel that it's time for the sector to kind of reinvent itself for the new normal. And we'd like to discuss, how technology can actually do it, combat some of these channels. So I will start off with my first question to you, Atanu. As you know, that the pandemic has kind of put a lot of immense responsibility on the pharma sector's shoulders. Accelerated vaccine trials, which I just talked about, rapid drug discovery, meeting drug demands, overcoming shortages of raw materials. There are so many things that we keep hearing about everywhere. There's so many things being discussed. But I think it would be good to hear from a technology leader like you some of the major challenges that your sector is facing, has faced during this pandemic, and what are some of the resulting changes.
So one is to how do you increase the capacity utilization of the existing asset to produce more. You cannot do a capex investment suddenly, but whatever existing capacity is there, how do you do that more? For example, itolizumab is one of the drugs which was very much in news in the month of April when suddenly that was required for various serious COVID patients who had this cytokine storm. And, earlier the requirement was about 200 vials. The demand was only 200 vials per week, and that became 7,000 vials per week. So from 200 to 7,000, there is no comparison, and you certainly can't have more plants to do that. So how do you extract more capacity out of it? And that is where So that is a challenge, and how do you do that? And that is where significant amount of analytics plays an important role. And these are biologics products, it can make a significant difference. So that is one of the challenges which is there, that your supply chain responsiveness and capacity responsiveness. Similarly, the whole thing on and means this got actuated during the COVID times, but this was always a requirement. How can you produce from whatever capacity you have, more from less, and all these things were always there. But the necessity of this was felt during these days. Similarly, things like clinical trials are done in a particular way. Traditionally, it has been done in a particular way, and as it happens that it is an adversity which brings the brings the innovation. And so clinical trials started getting done in a distributed hybrid model, and that accelerated for this specific drug itself, which I'm talking about. It was a repurposed drug for COVID, and the clinical trials got done in a hybrid way. People didn't come to hospitals. So it was a much accelerated clinical trial which got done, and it enabled us to put the drug in the market much faster. Similarly, so these are some of the challenges. The other part is, how you are able to, how do you manage your workforce during the COVID days? Now, that is past now, but in the second wave of COVID, we had a lot of people who were infected. At the same time, we had to have this manufacturing going on. And as you saw, this product itself, this itolizumab, which had to be increased manifold. But we had about 500 people infected in our plant. So how you deliver with remotely, even in manufacturing, and which can you have the shop floor with minimal number of people, was again an important part. And that becomes a learning that, can you deliver even manufacturing operations remotely, or part of the where only basic essential people are there? Can you have supportive robots which can augment people to do cobots to some extent? How many things, how can you use augmented reality, virtual reality more effectively? So all the innovative use cases, we could see its value. Earlier, it was considered as a hype, but we could see the value of it coming in these scenarios. So I think this COVID has actually accelerated adoption of new technologies, which could help doing things in a very, very different way. The fact of how do you get more capacity out of your existing plant, digital twins are a big enabler to make that happen. How do you improve your yield? How do you extract more out of it? So I think that is what is happening. So those are the challenges which COVID forced us, and the industry is responding to it, and it is forcing the industry to respond accordingly. The first wave of COVID had only, how do you work remotely, how the whole organization works remotely and in a secure way. But the second wave of COVID forced us to say, how do you get more capacity out of the existing assets, and how can you have less number of people physically present but still doing the same or more amount of work? I think, and that is where technology is playing a big role.
Anil, you're on mute.
Thanks, Tanu. I think some really, really great insight from your side and some very interesting things. How do you really manufacture remotely with, so much in the workforce being infected? That's quite a challenge, and, so many other, technology usage and all that. So I think, some, really good. I think as you rightly said, there's now a need for accelerated adoption of new technologies, as you just suggested. So let me move to Ankur on that particular point only. Ankur, I think, what Atanu is mentioning is about a lot of new technology usage, and probably I think digital transformation becomes a very critical aspect over here to kind of address many of these challenges. So, what are the priority transformation areas for this sector? What are your views?
So, Anil, I think certain changes or certain trends I already covered when I covered the tech vision. But overall, another area I'd like to focus on, COVID-19 pandemic has transformed the way doctors have engaged with their patients, right? And increased their dependence on digital technologies. Now, similarly, in a similar way, the pharma companies interact with doctors in this dynamic digital age that also needs a real overhaul. The growth in remote healthcare will require new engagement models by pharma companies, and and that is evolving. A lot of people are doing various things. Our research shows that while more than half of the doctors felt that the volume of information sent through digital channels by pharma companies has significantly increased in the wake of COVID, but more than half also believe that pharma companies need to better understand their evolving needs of the doctors. So today, many pharmaceutical companies are providing mono or multi-channel engagement with their doctors, which gives a bit of an inconsistent experience to them. So the need of the hour is really to take the journey from multi-channel to omni-channel experience, and that is to deliver connected experiences to each of the doctors and the consumers. So in this specific area, there are a couple of elements that I'd like to talk about. One is how do you know your consumers better? Right? The pharma companies can use technology and analytics to create a unique doctors database comprising of key attributes such as factual and behavioral. Another element is how do you segment and profile your customers, right? So analytics and AI and machine learning again can help pharma companies identifying specific doctor segments and customize their offerings accordingly. Defining a customized engagement strategy. I mean, digital technologies can again help companies create a consistent, cohesive engagement strategy here. Automation of delivery mechanism is another key element here, which can be supported by digital technologies and automation, which wherein the pharma companies can create a connected blueprint to deliver a consistent experience across all doctor touchpoints. This is like the front end side, right? But inward focusing apart from this, accelerating the digitization of the core of enterprise operations still remains key, right? Though there is a lot of maturity in the pharma companies in this space, digital is making manufacturing more efficient. I think Atanu did cover how capacity utilizations can really increase. Many pharma companies, have used traditional batch manufacturing, and digital is helping them unlock capacity and improve productivity. Supply chains have also had long lead times and many uncertainties in this time. But for running these efficiently, supply chains need to become more digital for better planning and execution. And there are multiple initiatives being taken by multiple of our clients in this space. There is also a strong focus on quality and compliance. It always remains, right, from an audit readiness perspective, because US FDA inspection citations data sets suggests that the top issues pertaining to failure to investigate the discrepancies and inability to follow the written procedures. Now, these citations are indicative of the need to set up a robust system of document to process all the data. Now, setting up a digital quality management system as well, which can integrate the entire product value chain, serving as a single version of truth for the entire organization is also a need for the hour. Anil.
Thanks, Ankur. I think very valid points on the digital transformation bit. Yes, the engagement with the doctors. I think for patients also, I think a lot of this doctor-patient interaction has become completely, remote. So obviously, pharma companies also have to look at changing their engagement models and look at technology for, production. Gyan, first, if you'd like to add anything more to what Atanu and Ankur have said, and also I think Atanu did refer to something about clinical trials, but I think maybe you want to elaborate on how this pandemic has really affected clinical trials, and now do you see things being done differently in terms of monitoring trials or ensuring patient safety? What are the changes that you see?
Thanks, Anil. I think Atanu and Ankur has covered many of the areas. Almost all the new digital technology patterns, how the use cases are there in the pharma. If it is not being adopted, at least the thought process to start thinking in that direction, to evolving idea towards that, and how it is going to help pharma companies in their operations, manufacturing, quality, compliance, and overall at the end, the efficiency and excellence it will bring. But coming back to your specific point on that, I mean, we have talked about what are the things which is being done in the time of the COVID and all. Atanu has already explained in detail with the technology and the challenges what we faced. One of the areas which is again related to the supply chain. Uh, in India, we depend heavily on the imports of the raw materials and all, and then there are many of the formulation drugs which needs to the API to be manufactured either in India or imported. That also impacted, and that leads to again to how we can make those plants more flexible to produce some of the more products. Many of the companies in India, they do have the DMF for those APIs, but they were not able to produce because it was not very economical to produce here. So the whole API manufacturing and other intermediates and all that has also took a kind of internal evaluation that whether the cost or the availability of the material should be taken in the priority. Then second part, I will say that, okay, apart from the external customer engagement, whether it is a doctor or whether it is your partners and all, like any other industry, your collaborations, your small processes, automations, whether it is a digital signature or e-signature, and making your infrastructure accessible remotely, those things have been done. But more than that, when the pharma companies have the challenge in terms of their existing IT landscape, and to enabling it, exposing over the internet or through the VPN, the cybersecurity was one of the challenge where every pharma company started rethinking and repositioning itself, whether hardening of the infrastructure or looking forward a journey towards that, the whole infrastructure will revamp. So as in the future, even if we modernize our applications and the business processes, we'll be able to access it remotely also. Now, on the point related to this, how we have been handling this clinical trial and all, definitely there is a lot of thought process and a lot of, I will say, use cases or POCs are going on. Conducting these clinical trials in a country like India, where you have to conduct this kind of in a not in a single place, but in a designated manner, and that too remotely doing this and in a faster manner, it's a challenge. Because different states, different areas, you will have the different level of pandemic compliances in that, even reaching to them and at a time to collect the samples or take the data, that's very difficult. But a lot of things are getting evolving out. The adoption is still very primitive stage, whether it is wearable or whether it is a digital interfaces like mobile apps and all, where you will be keep updating those, collaborating with them. But over a period, this will definitely get adopted. But what has helped in this clinical trial more is that the ability to move the cloud and use the new technologies like the analytics and the algorithms to conclude certain scenarios, or to basically simulate your scenarios to come to a conclusion which has basically compressed the time to complete your trials and all. I mean, no better example than could be the COVID vaccine itself, where multiple countries, multiple companies across the globe, they have successfully completed their phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials, and they have launched those vaccines in the market. So typically, which happens to be 10 to 12 years, that has been completed in 10 to 12 months. That itself speaks a volume of the adoption of technology, whether it is in terms of clinical trial, manufacturing, or supply chain.
Yeah, thanks, Gyan. I think very valid point. I think being able to squeeze the time from multiple years to just under 12 months, it's itself a feat in itself, and definitely you need technology to be able to help you do all of that and achieve all that. Anjani, I think with all this, we've been discussing a whole lot of things about the move to digital and clinical trials also moving digital and all. I think this is leading to probably a flood of a lot of real-time data that is being generated. How is the sector really leveraging it to its advantage?
Thank you, Anil. Many of you might have heard "City never sleeps." Citibank's punchline. The new punchline is "Data never sleeps." So you keep generating the data every day. 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, which is 2.5 into 10 to the power 18. So you can imagine how much data we are generating. To your point, I mean, you go to any enterprise, not just pharma, 90% of the data what has been generated in most companies in last 2 to 3 years data. And that is where what you are coming is, Anjani, we are generating too much of data. What is happening? Even before I come to pharma, I had a privilege to work in consulting and several other industries before I came to pharma. Most companies are already many sectors are already using the data in the right way. If you look at finance or CPG, consumer product goods, they are already using the data to their advantage. In the pharma front, since digitization itself is very new, like last 2-3 years, especially if you come to generic pharma companies, that is what we have been using. I will go to each of the area, right? How we generate the data, it is very important. What is the objective you are trying to solve with this, right? One of the things I think Atanu talked about, resiliency, supply chain resiliency. How do you bring supply chain resiliency? Now in supply chain, you do have data of your forecast demand. You have several factors impacting the demand. You also have the supplies data of the past, and there are external data which is available from the external sources, and there are some shipping data which is not a direct data, but you can take it. How do you create an AI model based on that, which will tell you that there is a disruption or there is going to be a pricing pressure on certain API? That is what you could use the data, and many companies are already using it. I don't know how many generic companies, but I know few innovative companies are already using this data, correct, to make supply chain resiliency, and we are already working on how do you bring the whole control tower concept using that. When you come to manufacturing, typically what we do is many of the companies logbook, e-logbook, electronic logbook, MES, we use just for compliance purposes, correct? And compliance, we think, oh, now data is available, we'll just eyeball it. But hey, once you have the data available, you could bring a lot of insight. You could throw exception-based reporting, exception-based escalations. And that is what could be used by the whole digitization you could use to your advantage. All along, we have been talking on compliance is anytime readiness, correct? Anytime readiness you could achieve just by, if you have the right set of data available and insight, you could do anytime readiness. And several technology, like one I talked about, MES, correct? Another one is also the predictive analytics on the manufacturing side. Once you have the right data available, you have the data from the equipment, you could do predictive analytics, golden batch, and you could figure it out. You could make sure that batches which you are making is quality compliant, and also your rejection rates are very, very high. Your lot acceptance rates are very high, and that's the proper use of the data on the other side. Then the third one, which comes, is the R&D, which Gyan talked about, like how people could do 12 years to 12 months. But even out there, one more thing on the clinical trial, which Gyan was saying, I would just like to add. Even biggest challenge in the clinical trials is how do you recruit the right shortlist and recruit the right patients, and this has been challenged for years. Companies are using AI ML to solve that, and that has been in COVID times. All of a sudden, you would have heard COVID test is being done in a very remote places. Do you think it was done arbitrarily? The answer is no. It was done based on certain data segmentation, based on certain demographics and analytics. Right? Then the next one, which comes, is the whole sales force, which Ankur was talking about. How do you bring the digitization on the sales force? And many of these things, Ankur, which you talked about, again, I can't name because I was in a consulting company at that time. We were doing that in 2008, 2009, where we had converted the multi-channel to omni-channel, and doctors had pretty good experience, and adoption rates were also pretty decent. Of course, it was in US, it was not in India. And we saw significant shifts right out there. When the pandemic was going on, a CIO from a big pharma company called me up. Of course, he knows that I'm from digital background and I come from this. They wanted to shift everything to virtual. They did not have virtual to the, I'm not talking of virtual working. We all have done virtual working. How do you shift the whole detailing of virtual to the virtual channel? And it is not easy. And how, I mean, I did have some suggestion, and they worked one of the consulting company, and I was amazed at the speed, at the agility they moved. Within 4 weeks, they had 75% detailing happening through the virtual channel. And I'm talking of India and few more Asian countries, correct? So these are the I would say these are the certain things which people are using the data to their advantage. Of course, as the data democratization happened, the data layer happened. The answer is we are still 2-3 years, at least 2-3 years, where user will say, "Hey, I deserve this data. I deserve to see this data in this form, and I have that available." Correct. So
Yeah, thanks, Anjani. I think the really good use cases of how data is being used, and yeah, data never sleeps. Actually, data is the new oil. As they say about data, and you really can put it to a lot of good uses. And you have given some really good examples, like those clinical trial data and all being researching people to do clinical trials on. So good point from you. I think you also referred to the supply chain and all. So I'll just take that forward and put my question to Ankur. You did mention a few innovations around that. So Ankur, I think you want to elaborate on some of the innovations that are really happening for managing the supply chain disruption. How, for instance, is technology helping monitor potential supply and its potential demand and identify supply bottlenecks to address drug shortages. We saw a lot of that happening in this pandemic, drug shortages, and how do you really meet that? So what are your thoughts?
Thanks for that question, Anil. I think Atanu, Gyan, Anjani have touched on it. But basically, the moot point is that the pandemic really magnified already existing issues in pharmaceutical supply chain, right? Demanding dynamic changes in the supply chain planning with the need for a real rapid response war room. That was required for visibility, planning, and execution. I mean, the kind of changes were so rapid. Right tools, processes, and governance can really enable companies to conduct a robust scenario planning and enable rapid response in a cost-effective manner. Need of the hour was also to enhance visibility across the supply chain, correct? Especially to tier 3 or tier 4 suppliers, where the quantum of the disruptions faced by them were much higher because of the pandemic. I think all the eminent speakers here also talked about risk sensing, right? So rapid risk sensing, building resilience will continue to remain key. And hence upstream supplier risk management and mitigation is important. I think everyone did talk about, and I think Anjani was also talking about collaboration across the network, and that will be of pristine and prime importance of how do you collaborate well with the network and with all the partners. I think the winning theme here in this context will be technologies such as blockchain, which can enable a platform for transparency, control, and compliance in outsourced manufacturing, correct? And building on ongoing capacity for risk resilience and building strong ecosystem of partners will be of prime importance again. I think another aspect in supply chain, workforce safety. I think Atanu was referring to it, if I'm not wrong. Workforce safety and continuing operations at sites in another is another kind of a new normal force that has come in, correct? As the waves come in and there are worker safety issues, but still continuing operations is extremely important. So business continuity, enhancing safety practices, and work redistribution at sites will remain important considerations. So leveraging automation, I think it was talked about remote operations and advanced technologies will be the new implications for the future. So I think the winning theme again in this context will be, how do you accelerate intelligent automation and improve while still improving workforce safety and efficiency. For many companies, it is also the time to really rethink the legacy network designs, considering post-COVID geopolitics, and also to enable supply flexibility. Structural decisions paving the way for future growth, in addition to building the right technology architecture, is the optimal way, I believe, for creating a flexible and transparent supply network, Anil, to which helps in impacting any of these surges in demands and troughs.
Thanks, Ankur. I think thanks for addressing those and all those innovations that you've talked about in terms of, making the, supply chain a little more transparent, and well managed. Atanu, I think, you referred to something about, counterfeit drugs, and that's a, growing threat. In fact, there's so much of publicly available news and reports that suggest that, around 20% of pharma goods that are sold in the Indian market are actually fake, and it's growing very fast. So, your views around technological innovations to counter this serious menace to public health?
So I think we need to have easy solutions, something which can be quickly adopted, and then more robust solutions. But for sure, this is a big problem, and it was as such in COVID also. This was seen, and that is why you had remdesivir, which was people were putting water or instead of that, and all sorts of things were happening. And then for each district, there was a drug officer who was monitoring batches of different drugs and allocating it to different hospitals. So it was a problem. Now, the easiest solution is, first is, in India, other countries have done serialization. And in India, serialization, a mandate for serialization has not been there. So we are supplying to so many other countries where we have track and trace and serialization, but locally within India, we don't have it. So I think that is the first thing which needs to be done. And then then the traceability of the finished product would get established, and whatever we are doing through QR code and other things for the other countries, the same thing can happen here. And then to a large extent, the counterfeit problem would get addressed. That is the something which can be done immediately, because most of the pharma companies are supplying to other parts of the world, and they know how to do it, so it will be easy to do it. The better way is, how do we apply blockchain into this? And that is what would be very important for a country like India, where we have a very, unlike other countries, the distribution chain, the last mile, is very large. So, from the distributor to the multiple chemist in the length and the breadth of the country, rarely we have such a large distribution chain anywhere globally. US might consume a lot more drugs, but the distribution chain is not so complex. And that is where actually blockchain would help significantly. So I think the short-term approach is to have the serialization and track and trace program implemented in India, where government has to play important role. And the second thing is, in a long term, to have blockchain in the supply chain.
Thank you, Atanu. I think good points. But this is a really interesting thing, that while we have serialization for exporting to other countries, we don't have it for our own country. So obviously that's something that to really look at, and maybe it can actually be managed. Anjani, on the I think Gyan mentioned referred to this about the cybersecurity part. And I think, the pharma sector has always been an attractive target for cyber attacks. But now I think, has it really now become more attractive to cyber criminals due to the pandemic? and how is the really pharma sector dealing with it? How should it deal with it?
Pretty interesting point. And, not only pharma, any CIO or IT head, if you ask after pandemic, they had hard time dealing with either the attack or the purpose to attack, correct? So if you look at just the general statistics from various analysts, security analysts, they said 10 times the attack went between January 2020 to March 2020. The attack vector went 10 times in general, right? In pharma, we ourselves saw spam and phishing mail getting increased by 3 times. What we used to see daily and what we saw, and I filtered few things which would have passed unfiltered. I am not even counting them, right? So with that, it was very serious, and healthcare and pharma sector, for all the right reasons, it was targeted globally. Some analysts pointed out in US, there was not even a single pharma company or healthcare which was not targeted in first 6 months of 2020. And if you look at our readiness, we had, as in general, we had all the basic things which we do, be it antivirus, we had other endpoint securities, firewalls. But did we have advanced level tools? Most of us did not, correct? Zero-day security, were we ready for zero-day vulnerabilities? Most likely not. Did we ever look at patching very seriously? We were still running at Windows 2008, Windows 2007, which Microsoft had stopped even giving the support. And that is where I would say major challenge was the more than anything else, the readiness and our own people's attitude. We will do just like vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, most pharma company will do. Some will do it annually, some will do semi-annually. But what do we do with the findings of it? Do we address it? Correct? That was one challenge. Two, when you are using small third-party vendors, be it for attendance, be it for HR, be it for third-party sales data collaboration, do you look at the readiness of that? And I will go back to, if I go back to my multinational client in 2009, 2010, they will audit all the vendors on security aspect, but on pharma side, we were not doing it. So that was, again, point of concern. What we did, but what was amazing is most of the company, what we have done is we not only started looking at basic things, we also started looking at advanced things, which is deployed in financial industry, insurance industry, like XDR, extended detect and response. We implemented XDR, and several of pharma companies have employed that. And another one is SIEM/SOC. Wherever there was not SIEM/SOC, you did it. Firewall rules were definitely tightened. Inside the network topology, if you had all of them connected, you went to a star where you have less number of, I would say, vulnerable point, or even if somebody got into, you could be stopped, correct? Then next one, which is analytics-based threat hunting, and it is very, very important, because previously, if you hear that some pharma company has been targeted, you want to make sure you are ready, correct? It will take you months to figure that out. If you have analytics-based threat hunting, within a couple of days, you will be again ready for it. So I would say, and that apart from all these, the biggest factor is your own people. Are your own people educated enough? How do they treat? Let's say even if a phishing mail has passed through the filter, are they informing you back, or are they acting onto it? Right? Just playing onto it. And this is very important. What we did is we did a lot of education, and that's still continuing. And as the new people come in, we are trying to put this as a part of onboarding process, that when they come in, they understand my security landscape, and they help us to detect the security rather than play onto it. And that will be probably the biggest defense line.
Thanks a lot, Anjani. I think good points on the security front. So now I think we've discussed so many different types of technologies, and we've discussed so many different issues, and that can really be addressed with technology. And all of you have shared some really great inputs. Now, this one common question I'll ask all of you. I think Ankur already shared Accenture's tech vision for the pharma sector, but I think it would be good to hear directly from technology leaders like you. As to what do you think is the technology vision for this sector according to you. So let's start with you, Gyan.
Thanks, Anil. And look, if you talk an IT person or any CIO for a technology vision, he will have all the sets of new technology and being used in the different processes, be it operation, be it R&D, be it lab, be it supply chain, be it collaboration with your doctors, with the third-party logistics, and be it clinical trials. I mean, you have a number of use cases, and there is a business need also for that. And then it comes that how you are going to prioritize that journey. So all those spaces and areas, you have the very valid use cases and proven use cases by some of the companies in those spaces. But depending on the different companies, IT landscape, application infrastructure landscape, and then you align that journey in a phased manner. For example, you will have MES, you will have your electronic lab notebook, you'll have your LIMS, you'll have your, let's say, QMS, your ERP, your CRM, but all those is still not talking to each other, even your internal applications. That structured data insight is still missing in many of the organizations. Forget about some of the unstructured data which goes on paper or on the digital format, where we talk about RPA, where we talk about using OCR engines, simulating some of the processes through the AR, VR, and then making actionable points using digital twins and all. So we need to first do the self-introspection assessment that where we stand as an organization. And based on that, the journey would be defined. But what I can definitely spell out here is that the technologies which will become very relevant, and maybe probably it will need a prior acceptance for each of the pharma companies, which basically mandates or ensures the compliance and also ensures the quality. So IT OT integrations in different spaces, that will happen, and there will be no more isolation of or the silo looking of the OT data and the IT data. It needs to have a lot of data driven decisions going across the functions, processes, internal as well as external. So that will ensure that, okay, you to a large extent you are ensuring that your deviations or the non-compliances are less, and you will finally land up your whether the golden batch or whether it is the most efficient parameters which will give you the best yield of the product in terms of quality and also in terms of your yield size. So on that manufacturing side, this will go definitely because it will ensure efficiency as well as the compliance. Second is on the supply chain side. Supply chain side, okay, the visibility or transparency of the supply chain from right from your packaging line till the time it is getting dispensed. Though there are statutes or the regulatory compliances in terms of track and trace and all, but still the countries like India, where you'll have quite a large number of players who also have the domestic as well as the overseas. The infrastructure is ready for them, and they're doing already for the other geographies. So there is no harm in basically rolling out that to the domestic countries like India. Then bringing more to that is that bringing a data insight of that to bring resiliency in the supply chain. I think all the big pharma companies, including the domestic pharma companies, they have taken initiative to make their supply chain management more resilient, and not also resilient, also in terms of more efficient. If you compare that with any of the other manufacturing organizations, if you compare also with, let's say, process manufacturing like steel and all, still pharma is way behind, because in pharma, for certain of your raw materials, whether it is excipients, whether it is your APIs, you have very limited set of suppliers, and their supplies and their limitations also impacts your entire manufacturing plan, production plan, and supply chain. So with the data and with also the better capacity utilization and flexibility in your manufacturing operations, probably we can achieve more in the supply chain. And of course, blockchain is one of the very talked about technology in supply chain, whether from the track and trace or from the counterfeit drugs perspective. that is going to be the one of the things which will getting adopted with the network of the suppliers, customers, and also the different partners. And some of the vendors already started working on that. So more than the issue management, it will become also the network of your entire supply chain network in terms of the document management and the information management. More collaborative approach will come. And if we talk about other technologies, yes, in the production and all, IoT is going to be the one which is definitely going to add immediate and a lot of value to that in terms of efficiency and also making the cost optimization. Starting with your utility area, then moving to the production areas, energy management and all, predictive maintenance. This is all we talked about, and all the companies they have done in a small or big way. Some POCs or one unit got rolled out. They'll be in the phases of getting rolled out to the other manufacturing plants. So one very important thing what will happen is that a lot of cultural transformation in the way we work in the manufacturing setup of pharma, that is also going to evolve, and that will evolve most on the kind of push from the technology. It is not kind of users will be demanding, but also the whole environment and ecosystem is pushing it out to get adopted to that kind of platform. So remotely working or doing the work virtually and still being compliant, or having the minimal workforce and connecting the dots internal and external in terms of data. So as your organization and processes will become more data driven rather than the heuristic of some expertise and all. So we are moving towards that. And digitalization opportunities, if you talk about any of the IT persons, you will have a list of these things. And I think based on the IT maturity in terms of landscape and the technology adoptions, and of course, an orchestrating part that cybersecurity, because the cybersecurity has a lot of dependencies on your IT landscape, and then probably start moving in that phase, in the phased manner to that way.
Thanks, Gyan. Atanu, I mean, what is your technology vision for this sector's future?
So I think broad points would be, and many of these things would be repetition of what we have already heard, but I will summarize in from the way I see it. One is that the core, the foundations of the entire value chain has to be digitized intelligently. So digitize the core intelligently, which is the complete value chain, where the transactions have to be done. That needs an intelligent digitization with the process improvement baked in, leveraging the technologies which will be available. Obviously, S4HANA and others are different platforms and similarly are there. So that is digitizing the code. And similarly, other platforms are there. They are all new generation. So digitize the code appropriately would be one thing. Second thing is second layer would be convergence of the architecture, where you pull data from multiple sources, multiple platforms, and have a data lake or where you can get all the advanced analytics, which will subsequently help you. So those are the three dimensions I'm looking at. The whole value chain needs to get digitized, so that digitization of the code, and then interoperability, where it is IT, OT, take all the data, connect everything, sensors, soft sensors, where you connect the whole environment. And third layer is with the data generated, create useful insights. Fourth parallel stream would be that, which Ankur had referred, is very important, is how do you, and so very important in India, how do you create build a digital capability across the organization, not only within IT, but across the organization, the digital quotient, so that everybody is very familiar with the technology and at home. And that becomes all the more important because few years from now, we will have the workforce who would have been born 2000 later. So we need to also build systems for that. And the new workforce would be 2000 later. And the earlier workforce is earlier generation. So they have to gel around well. So I think these are the things which I would be talking about. And cyber security is given. It is a moving goalpost. It is a moving target, and one has to be always on top of it. So I think these are, from my perspective, things to be looked at.
Thanks,
And the
Atanu.
concepts of digital twin and all these things are in that emerging technology, which I talked about above the digital core.
Right. Thanks. I think, good way to kind of, put all this into perspective, being able to digitize intelligently and, have the entire value chain that is digitized, and, there's convergence of architecture. So many interesting things that have come in. Anjani, do you want to add something on that in terms of the tech vision for this sector? Do you have something additional also to add? I think Gyan and Atanu have kind of really nicely summed up their tech vision for the sector, but do you want to add something? You've got perspectives from many other industries as well. So any thoughts?
Yeah, see what Ankur has said on the futuristic technology, he has beautifully summarized, correct? And I think Gyan and Atanu has given the right perspective, and Atanu has especially India's two top pharma companies digital transformation. So of course, very, very pragmatic one. What I will give is more on what is my perspective coming from different industry. Right? If you look at it, I mean, BCG themselves say 50% of the job in next 6 years, what is being done can be automated, not just digitized, can be automated, right? And 30% of them is just data-based decisions can be taken by machines, which is being today taken by human beings, right? And Ankur again talked about automation. So that will be because that directly gives you the saving, and that saves you time. So that gives you a business advantage, will be for sure a priority. This second one, and other things I will put in 3 parts. The first is the common theme, digitization and data democratization and integration. These 3 things will be common theme across the functional area of pharma. The second one is pragmatic, but not unique. And those will be the AI, ML, analytics, what you are doing. AI, ML with edge, which is already happening in many other industry. I do expect that AI with edge technology, where you are storing the data right out there. This is very, very important when you do vision technology, like you are measuring the size of the capsule, or you are doing shape or color through the AI. And it's already, many machines have inbuilt capability. Some you are doing externally. Next one, NLP in AI. You want to read the whole RCA document, root cause document, which is humanly impossible in any company to read to be reviewed by human being. Third one would be the chatbot. In the front end, in the company, somehow in pharma context, I see the chatbot is underplayed. Okay, and I see that will be one thing. Apart from this, all the other technology Gyan and Atanu talked about. The next one, the third point I would want to talk about is disruptive, right? So one disruption which was mentioned is digital twin. Again, very not so much used. Very few pharma company uses it, and it has a lot of potential. Why I say disruptive? Digital twin is fairly evolved, but in pharma context, it has an altogether different meaning. The second one is the smart glasses. Smart glasses has a very mundane uses, but if you take in terms of lab, it can change. And there are companies like there is a New Jersey-based company which is already helping a lot of innovative pharma companies. We are working with them. That could change the way whole compliance is looked at and how automation is looked at it. Then the third one is digital health, and it's a digital pill, digital health. You might have heard that you take a medicine. How does your body parameter fluctuates? Someone has a wearable device, someone uses your own wearable device. That's coming up very well, and many of the Indian companies are already onto it. I know Lupin has a couple of products around it, right? And this is one thing which will come, and more on consumer side, it will come a lot, consumer pharma. Fourth one would be the digital, the personal medication, which is again, it has already come up in some countries, but it's at a very nascent and a small scale. The next one is 3D manufacturing of the pharmaceutical capsules and oral doses. which is again in experimental phase. But I think these are the 4-5 things which will be very disruptive in pharma. That's my summarization of this.
Thanks, Anjani. I think thanks for summarizing it and sharing all those views. It's I think I kind of exhausted my questions, so I think it's time for the Q&A. One question that I have is have received is that a majority of cybersecurity threats to pharma are now cyber espionage and ransomware. So how do you really look at blocking them? Can AI really be used? Does AI have a role to play in thwarting many of these new threats? I don't know who would like to answer this. Anjani, maybe you'd like to try.
Sure. So if you look at espionage and ransomware, that's the end point. The first point is somebody has been able to get into your network, correct? Right. And somebody has been able to get into your network for really long time. If they are able to get into your network completely, if you are there, they are able to do their ransomware attack on your system. That means, so the symptom is still the basic. How do you prevent? As long as you have basic factors, basic factors corrected, and if you have right alert mechanism, even if somebody comes into your environment, you will be able to thwart the whole ransomware attack on the whole of your data center. That's number one. Number two is, even if attack happens, you have to be ready. How do you what is your disaster recovery planning? What is your backup restoration? But saying that no, we cannot have it is almost impossible, because attackers are, whether we like it or not, 2 steps ahead of us. And if world's best companies, best technology company can be attacked, any company can be attacked. So this is the two-prong approach. How do you put the perimeter security to the highest? To using AI, do you have automated threat hunting, that if one thing is attacked, you should be able to see holistic approach. Are there other things which is open, and how do you automatically quarantine it? And the second part is, if it happens, how are you prepared?
I think, Anil, if I can add to what Anjani mentioned, I think we've all talked about, right, in the past 1 year, security strategies and practices have been tested like no other, right? And pharma has been rapidly under attack. I mean, rapidly accelerated digital transformation, which every organization is doing. Then opportunistic phishing campaigns, which Anjani was also referring to, discontinuity of certain information security operations, and in certain cases, financial constraints, are really creating a perfect storm in this COVID disrupted world. Now, in such a climate, and with organizations attempting to really stabilize their current operations, there is a need for putting the right controls in place to create a safe and secure environment. I mean, at Accenture, we have identified 4 elements of adaptive security that can help, right? First one is a secure mindset. The second is to secure the network access. Third is to secure work environments. And the fourth is secure your collaboration with your broader ecosystem. I mean, the pharma companies are really grappling with these new uncertainties created in their environment and the threats due to cybersecurity. And while the industry leaders are beginning to focus on robust systems and endpoint encryption, most other players are still reactionary, right? Companies need to build and adopt a multi-dimensional crisis management strategy, correct? With many work streams and teams that can collaborate closely, often really on a daily basis. And that is the way to help achieve cyber security resilience and can help protect enterprises from harm. Because as Anjani was mentioning, the cyber threat actors will continue to figure out new ways to penetrate.
Okay. Gyan, do you want to add anything to that, or shall we move to the next question?
Yeah, I think Ankur and Anjani both have covered, the entire space and how to do this. I will just add a few of the points in this, that cybersecurity, the way pharma industry has faced, because there was a lot of, I will say that infrastructure-wise and also the culturally, the people awareness and all, that was also one of the prime factor. And all of a sudden, pharma company, because of pandemic and all, where most of the people are not used to work remotely and all. They have been asked to work remotely, collaborate, and if there is no awareness in terms of that, in secured way collaborations, be watchful what you are doing. That has also one of the reason for that. But yes, I agree to the point that even you have all n number of your security components and processes as well as the systems implemented, still you are not 100% safe, and the vulnerability still remains. In that cases, one of the things which basically can make the organization on a safer side is that how secure or robust your backup processes are, and how your DR and business continuity is that, and added to that, how soon you are able to understand if any malware or any suspicious thing has come to your network. Generally, this ransomware attack and all, it will not happen in a day. It will come to your network, whether it is social engineering, phishing, or it has come in somebody collaborating externally, and it will do the Reiki in your network. And a certain time it will start attacking, and then when the attack starts, then people will start looking into this, linking it, and then trying to find it out. This would be a regular process. I mean, SOC and all these things have started in the pharma also. People will be now focusing more not in just having a SOC compliance, but also they will be taking actions, and there will be review meetings on that. That if there is any of the positive things have come, the true positive has come, not the false positives, then the actions is being taken, and there will be SLAs and reviews on that. One important thing I will add here is that, which Ankur also pointed out, that what happens to that, the crisis management in case of the such kind of cyber attack and all, pharma or generally manufacturing companies are not very temperamentally and as a culturally, we are not very much oriented. That should become a process, and that should be done periodically. So as in such kind of crisis, the decisions and the processes and things can be implemented in a shorter time, and you will have a less impact as a corporate and as an enterprise, because not only losing the data, but the compliance side will be lost, reputation will be lost, and then you'll also have post that litigation problems from the customers, from the vendors, or from your employees, or from the third parties whose data has been lost.
Thanks a lot. So last question, an interesting one, which is, I think, around collaboration tools, because I think there's been a lot of discussion around remote collaboration, being able to, Atanu referred to, manufacturing remotely and all. So how do you see collaboration having evolved? Has it gone beyond just using Zoom or MS Teams for collaboration in the pharma sector? What's really new in terms of collaborating remotely? So any of you, the question comes. Who would like to take it up? Anjani, you want to start with that, and then maybe sure. We can take. Yeah,
I will start. Then Gyan can add his Gyan on top of it. So collaboration tools, if you look at it, 1 year back, 1.5 years back, when pandemic started, our Teams users, we have been on Teams for ages, Office 365. Our team adoption was probably 9%, 11%. Today, our Teams adoption would be 94%. So I think more than tool, it is the tool adoption, how it happens. Adoption, when we talk of adoption, there are two types of adoption. One is called probate adoption, where you have not very structured adoption. You don't do, people don't understand why we are adopting it. And second one is the epidemic adoption. In this case, even though we did not do enough about epidemic adoption on the Teams or Zoom, it did happen. So I think right now it is more important that any tool which is being used by organization, and most of the organization which I have seen have more than one tool which they use. Also, you will have, many of us previously did not allow multiple tools even to get access from the organization. Over last 1.5 years, of course, that has changed. Most of the tools are allowed in the company, and collaboration tools are mostly, it is not that important. What is important is the adoption. That is what my take would be. Gyan can add.
Gyan, would you like
you
to
are not on the point, Anjani. I think this has been the story across the organizations, that there will be one or other kind or multiple kind of collaboration tools. However, the adoption was very, very negligible. But in this pandemic, with the very little effort, I think there was a need of the hour to people to basically collaborate, communicate, and they demanded at times the support from the IT, and they also basically become the kind of mostly which is not there in the pharma companies, self-intuitive, and started adopting that. And we also have the similar kind of story that we started our Office 365 journey just before the pandemic. We started in December, and we thought that, okay, we will go live by the end of the year, 2020. However, the whole adoption happens in 2 months only. And everybody, and this time for even a smaller tool, like if you go for any applications where the people will be having 2 or 3 forms to do certain actions, you have to organize trainings, you have to train them, and adoption has been always a challenge in the manufacturing scenario. But in case of collaboration tool, adoption happens, people voluntarily coming and asking for it and start using it. People who were having those access they were not using, they started using it. That has been the scenario. And multiple tools is one of the another thing that this is again in the collaboration tool is more relevant, because there is no company, I think, they'll be only relying on, let's say, Microsoft Team or only on Zoom or only on Webex. There will be multiple tools, and these tools will be again used by different departments and all. For example, IT team, when they're doing the remote support, they will have a different kind of tools, whether it is Webex or whether it is some AnyDesk or some kind of tools to collaborate and to do the remote troubleshooting and all. On the other hand, the people who are doing the lot of documentation and the documentation review and all, probably they will be doing in the Microsoft Team, because that comes with this building your own team and collaboration in the document and all on its SharePoint architecture. So, and with this also added to basically educate the people on some of the, whether it is the processes or whether it is awareness in terms of their cybersecurity hygiene kind of things. And this help to basically make your workforce even to work remotely in the secured way.
Thanks a lot, Gyan. Ankur,
I can
in fact,
also just add, I can just add to this. I mean, as a technology organization like Accenture and various other technology companies, we have our teams have been very used to using collaboration tools, right? But collaborating with our clients and organizations like the leaders who are representing here, that also very quickly became very seamless. Virtual interactions. I mean, during these times, we have we have done very, very deep and engaging workshops for designing certain systems or solutions. We have gone live on very, very transformational S4HANA programs for multiple clients, absolutely virtually, and engaging on these collaborative tools. So I think things have worked extremely seamlessly and very well, in the adoption of people, and as both Gyan and Anjani were mentioning, I think it has been a little bit by force, but the adoption has been so seamless that people have craved for it more and more, and the results have been fantastic.
Great. Thanks a lot, Ankur. And I think with that, I don't have any further questions from the audience. And it's also, almost time to end today's session. So thanks a lot for sharing your inputs and making such an interactive event. I'll request Ankur, you again to, sum up today's session and, give a vote of thanks, and then we'll call it the day.
Sure. Thanks, Anil, for that. I think I really wanted to thank all the panelists here. First of all, Anil, thanks for kind of getting all of us together. Thanks, Atanu, for all the insights that you shared. And I think the insights around how the challenges around increasing capacity were faced by pharma companies without adding capital expenditure, and how that was managed was phenomenal. We all as end users saw the results of that. I think the aspect about managing workforces while there are COVID infections and still managing operations with a lot of automation, was great to hear all your insights around that. I think your input around counterfeit drugs and how to manage that with serialization in India, and using track and trace is, I think some of those thoughts were fantastic. And the way Tanu summarized around his view of tech vision around digitizing the core and all the IT or OT operability, interoperability, and convergence of architectures building digital capabilities around across the organization. I think some of those thoughts were fantastic. I think thanks so much, Gyan, for giving your thoughts and perspective. I think the challenges that you referred to around import issues around raw material, which were required for manufacturing faced during COVID times, and how supply chain resiliency and how supply chains became very nimble and efficient while managing these challenges, I think were great insights. Your views around the cybersecurity challenges and how you addressed in your organization and insights shared were great. And your perspective on how one should prioritize. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of technology all around and a lot of digital tools all around, but prioritization of all those use cases and what has the biggest business impact and what makes sense. I think that was a great perspective for all our audiences to kind of learn from. And Anjani, thank you so much for your perspectives and the way you started with City Never Sleeps. City is very close to my heart. My wife has worked 15 years with City, but how you translated that to Data Never Sleeps was fantastic, and all your perspectives of how you saw in 2008 all the digitization of Salesforce coming in obviously in the other more evolved markets, and how we need to bring that here in India in our ecosystem. All of the supply chain resiliency and anytime readiness and predictive analytics and how use of AI and ML and R&D you talked about, those were great insights. I think to sum it all, I'd like to say that there is a Chinese proverb that comes to my mind. It says like this, right? That when the winds of change blow, some people build walls while the others build windmills. So we are amidst really challenging times, but we have an exciting future ahead. It's a future of hope. It's a future of human empowerment and human potential, working with technology in new ways, solving some of the big problems that are really intrinsic in the world today. And that will all be done by using an approach of windmills and not walls, and thinking differently as we deal with the new realities that all of us face today. There have been some great insights shared by all the leaders on the panel and all of their experiences that they've shared. Those insights and hopefully the Tech Vision 21 that I shared with you today, hopefully all of that will provide you with a little bit of thought starter so that you can navigate your way as you build the windmills that you need in the future in your journeys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankur, for summing it so well. We need windmills, not walls. Beautifully said. Thank you so much for that. We'll now call it a day. Thank you, Gyan. Thank you, Anjani. Thank you, Atanu, Ankur, for all
Thanks,
your
everyone.
your valuable time and sharing those insights. I think there's a lot of learning to take away from this session, and so I'd like to thank all of you for sharing them. So, dear attendees, thanks for joining us for this today. I hope you found it insightful. I wish you all the best of health. Stay home, stay safe, and have a great day. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.